Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I'm Tony Guerra. If you need my one-on-one help with letters of intent, I'm still doing them usually within a little even less than 24 hours, but my commitment is to do them in less than 48 hours, so deadlines are not a problem. You just enroll in the course, send me your letter of intent, your CV, and a link to the site. I don't give you recommendations for you to go back to work. I just fix it and make it right. So if you want that, that's great. Residency.teachable.com. Contact me at tonythepharmacist@gmail.com. So the dreaded Google Doc, it looks like it's out. I'm not sure if this is the one, but I'll post the link in the show notes. For those of you that don't know, the Google Doc is a Google document that has a listing of every single residency site for pharmacists in the United States. And as people are starting to get their sites and starting to get interviews, those go in. And what the value of this document is that it provides you with some reference. So you may be thinking, okay, well, it's February and I haven't gotten any interviews. What's going on? And you can go to the Google document and look up your sites and see if some people had gotten interviews or not. There is a clause that says everybody is supposed to get an acceptance or rejection for an interview. But as I've read over and over again, it's about 60% of the people that apply will get a response of some kind or another. But know that the responses that you did not get something come last. And the reason why sites don't want to do those is because as they're doing their interviews and kind of putting their class together, they don't really know if everyone's going to accept the interview. And that might seem crazy, like, no way, how could you turn down an interview? That's the place you wanted to go. Well, last year, somebody that had 18 interviews, and it was just too many. And she was able to go the other way, which is to kind of prune that up and say, all right, well, these are the ones I'm going to go to. These are the ones that I'm most interested in. And you still have probably an API to complete. So it's quite difficult to do that. It's always a little bit awkward talking to the preceptor. They're both excited for you at the same time as they're a little disappointed that your help is going to be interrupted, and interrupted quite a bit. This is common in pro soccer, especially in the Premier League in England, where people will go back to their countries and maybe train for the Olympics or some kind of other team, and then they just hope they don't get hurt, and then they come back. In the same way, your preceptor is hoping that you'll come back excited and refreshed, but again, those interviews can be pretty long, and especially those when you have to travel. With Omicron kind of taking over, we're not sure how things are going to go, but I think a lot of this is going to be virtual. But I've heard over and over again from RPDs that they really prefer the face-to-face. They're making a hiring decision, and making a hiring decision over a Zoom call is a lot tougher than just getting to see the person. I think my brother, when we talked about online dating back in the day, he would say that, when after you talk online, then you meet them, you're like meeting a new person. You're meeting them for the first time. And I know as an RPD, I wouldn't want to meet 12 people I've hired for the first time in July. I would like to meet them in January and February, so that when March comes, I can truly be excited about the prospects of my new entering class. So let's talk a little bit about making sure that this Google Doc is a useful tool and not something that just adds to your stress. Because what tends to happen is, because it's not like everyone is going to fill out their Google Doc or going to fill it out right away. That's not their primary concern. As soon as they get the interview, they're like, oh my gosh. It's not, oh my gosh, I'm going to go fill out the Google Doc so everybody else knows. There's this, I think it was an essay by Benjamin Percy. It was called Refresh. And he was talking about refreshing his screen just like you'll be refreshing your emails on match day. over and over again until you get the letter, good or bad. But what I'm cautioning you about right now is the just press send. So that send button, it's just calling to you, like, I'm going to take the pain away. Christmas Eve is tomorrow. Christmas is on, coming up next on Saturday, I think. I don't even know what day of the week it is. That's bad. I've been doing so many of these. And it's just the pain will go away when you just press send. And I assure you that is actually not the case. The pain will go away for a second. And then the horror that you now just have to sit and wait until these interview invitations come. And they'll come quickly. I would expect the first ones to come in the beginning of January. Some even go as quick as December. So it's not unheard of to start seeing these interviews just cranking them out, maybe trying to get them in before the Omicron wave, if that's possible. But let me talk about that just press send. So I keep seeing the word interprofessional team. I want to work on an interprofessional team. I want to work with physicians and nurses and all of that. And right now, you might not be working as a team at all. You're trying to do this all on your own. You're going to your API, then you're going to your hospital job or your community job, and then you're trying to get these applications done. So you're trying to be a writer and a proofreader and an editor, and you're trying to get recommendations, and you're trying to get transcripts. So you're an administrator. And then you're also trying to teach and be a clinician within your rotations. And so you are the entire interprofessional team. And just like if you were on an interprofessional team in the NICU and the preceptor said, okay, well, I need you to adjust the vent, you would be like, whoa, hey, I've been doing this for a couple of weeks, but you want me to adjust the vent? And you're like, yeah, adjust the vent. And you know how crazy that sounds. You get the respiratory therapist to adjust the vent. That's the person that's going to do it. That's the person that was trained for 2 years to do it, that has done it, and that understands step up, step down, understands what it is to have parents finally see their children breathing room air versus high velocity vent versus whatever. But it is ridiculous for you to manage the vent. But it's the same way that you say, well, I breathe, and I breathe at different rates, and the vent works at different rates, so maybe I could figure it out. And the same thing is happening with the writing. So I do writing, I do emails, I've done patient notes, I've even prepared a writing with other people that I've collaborated on with research, and then you realize that, oh yeah, I didn't really do that alone. So I'm here to help you, because that's what I do. I am the respiratory therapist who knows how to work the vent. I'm not a respiratory therapist. My job, my boss is, and the respiratory therapy program is actually on the first floor of my building. But I'm just trying to give you an analogy of why you're having so much trouble, is that you're trying to be the entire interdisciplinary team in your application. And some people are fortunate. Maybe they have that parent that is just the grammar person and who can give them the feedback. And I remember talking to somebody, it was actually 2 years ago, where she said, I loved that my dad is a cheerleader, but for these applications, I wanted my mom, who was going to absolutely destroy my application and make sure that it's better. And I kind of do the same thing. No holds barred. I just fix it. I don't have the time. I mean, I have the time, but we don't have the time for a back and forth that's going to be going in and saying, okay, well, what you could put here is, and wouldn't it be nice if you had this here? And then, no, this is what it needs to be fixed. And if you've got something solid, I will make it better in the one go. But if you're missing something big, I will say, hey, this is what you're missing. Give it back to me. Don't worry about grammar and syntax. I will fix it. So it's just an absolute joy for me to do it, because just like when you have that joy of starting with a patient, and maybe it's a longitudinal patient, and you get to see them improve over time, I'm more like the ER doc who gets to help the person improve right away. I'm the person that's sticking, if you've got a collapsed lung, I'm reinflating it, right? I'm doing this right away, immediate dopamine surge for me. I know that's a little bit selfish, but it is an absolute joy to see a document properly formatted with the proper font, spacing, the proper flow, that's not using those unoriginal beginnings and endings, and truly is a reflection of the hard work you've done over the last 3-4 years. Now, I remember talking to Eric Christensen, who owns MedEd 101, and he loves making test questions for BCPS and all of that. And when I was telling him about my writing, he was in editing, and he's like, that sounds horrible. And then he told me about him writing questions and how he loved writing questions and doing all this and creating all these challenges. I'm like, that sounds horrible. So when you're in an interdisciplinary group, which you may or may not be in now, it is a joy for the person that's doing it, and it's kind of tough for the person that is giving the work to them to see that. Now, I'm going to take you way back. One of my favorite movies of all time is called The Paper Chase. It's about an attorney student from Minnesota who goes to Harvard in his first year, and traditionally Harvard Law School is hard, but your first year of law school is especially hard, and class is hardest is the contracts class. So he went in and went into this contract class and got demolished the first day. He came back and succeeded, but then got crushed again, and then he came back again, and eventually all was well. But it's one of my favorite movies because the group that he was in, and law students tend to form these groups of maybe 6 to 8 people, where they'll take notes in something that's important to them. And for him, it was contracts. And so he said, you know what, instead of taking something that might already be good at, I'm going to take contracts because it's something that I want to be good at. And I get that you want to be good at writing, but the data show that on entry, writing was not something that the colleges really focused on. I mean, the acceptance rate is now close to 90%, and your class is somewhere around 82% or 83%. So nationwide, 83% we were admitted. And somehow the grades haven't really changed, but I'm going to guess that there was not a ton of writing, especially if you came from a 2-year school. And it's not to belittle the 2-year schools. I teach at one. It's just that you didn't have 300 and 400 level writing classes, or you didn't have 300 and 400 level liberal arts classes where they were writing intensive and you learned to write at a high level. I remember going into my, I was going to do a PhD. I ended up doing a master's, but I was going to my PhD, and my very first class I took, I got like low 70s on these very short kind of papers. And short in graduate writing is a single 500-word page. Generally, we're writing papers that are somewhere around 16, 20 pages. And it was just such a shock to me. It's like, whoa, what just happened? And the professor did this on purpose, and he sat down with me, and he sat down with the other students, and he's like, most of you are a little bit surprised right now. We're all nodding our heads like, yeah, we are a little surprised. Well, you were probably one of the best writers in your class. Like, yep, we were. And he's like, well, now you're in a new class. Now you have just gone from college to the NFL. And that was one of his analogies. And we're like, okay, everything has to be better. Everything has to be faster. Everything is going to be longer. But what he was saying was, welcome to the show. Welcome to this different level. And I think that we forget, because of the, kind of buzz around residency, that only 25% actually make it. And so when we have this Hunger Games moment over the next month or two, where of the 8,000 applicants, 1,600 will receive no invitation. And that's kind of heartbreaking to me as a person, because really knowing that, these pharmacy students have collectively, and I'm talking about all of them, spent around $2 billion for their educations, or that's what they owe. And that at the end of this, there is an acceptance rate of about 2/3 overall, if you get an interview. And knowing that at some of the lower tier med schools, they're in the low 90s, whereas pharmacy we're in the 60s, and that's only 25% of the population. So it's just kind of heartbreaking to me that we have that kind of rate. But it is like the Hunger Games; everything just kind of, first 1,600 are gone, and it's almost nicer for that to happen to you, because if you're not going to get a residency, then you know it when 1,600 people have been reintroduced to the job market, instead of a month later when the other 2,400 are going to go down. So again, we have, in general, it's going to be 8,000 go in, 1,600 get eliminated because they never got an interview, 2,400 more get eliminated because they don't match. Although if you look at the feeds on Facebook and, well, you guys don't use Facebook, but Insta and all that stuff, where you're going to keep seeing people's successes, and you're not going to see that a huge number, 2,400 of your peers did not match on that day. And then, we get to phase 2 where the odds are a bit tougher. So again, what I was kind of trying to get across is, here's the Google Doc. A lot of people are going to get interviews, and many people will not. When you start to kind of go into that process, what you want to start looking at is, okay, I've got an interview to these, and how did I feel those interviews went? And I'll talk more about that as the season goes on. But also, what kind of connections do I have there? Because what happens is, given 2 equal candidates from 2 different schools, generally, and I won't use the word better school, but the school that matches historically better is going to have the student that gets the residency, and that in many ways is no fault of your own if you're at one of the other schools. It's more that, okay, well, we've had people from here before, we've got people who are preceptors from that school here, and we just, it's a tie. We have to give the tie to blank school, which is tiered higher. So again, if you need my help, I'm here all until probably the first week of January. We start classes on the 10th. So I continue to do this. It's like a work queue for me. When I used to work at Walgreens, CVS, just kind of keep cranking them out, helping people, and just making their applications better. So TonyThePharmacist@gmail.com if you need to reach me, or residency.teachable.com. Just send me the LOI to that email address with your CV and a link to the site, and I will take care of it in less than 48 hours.